I sold over $40 million in sales in my career. I sold everything from magazines, gym memberships, consulting, B2B tech, and software. And I just left a $350,000 a year role for a massive company in the high tech and info space where I was one of the top sellers. And here are the 9 lessons that helped me make a lot more money and close a lot more sales.
So how do you put this to use? Most of the information that's out on the internet, it's usually not that good. And honestly, what I'm about to share with you may not be good as well either. So take everything that I share with a grain of salt. And so ultimately what I'm trying to do is this is me documenting the journey for me, because I regret when I had my personal training business that I built, when I was building my personal training studios, when I had my online consulting business, when I had my certification company, I didn't document jack. This is my goal, to document everything that I am learning as I'm continuing forward. So how do you actually put this into use? Number 1, I want you to be able to pick 1 to 3 things and put it into application. Because what most people do is they consume all of these things, but they don't create it, they don't implement. Because the best way that you are going to learn is to implement. And so I have this saying that I say to my business partner all the time, it's hit first, talk later. And he's very big into this, where we'll just do something, then we go out and get the information based on the things that we do, because when you get information after you've done the thing. So let me give you an example and make this more practical. If you've never sold in your life and you're watching this and you're like, oh my God, this information's amazing. But bruh, you have never sold in your life. You don't even know where this applies. But if you have sold in your life, and then you're applying this implementation, you're like, oh shit, this is extremely valuable. And that's what I'm really trying to get at here, which is take 1 or 2 things, go apply it, go sell, go learn some shit, and then apply the rest of the things. Now, side note, I digress. In terms of where this is going to be applicable, these rules are both going to apply to B2B and B2C selling. So take that with a grain of salt there. Now, why does this matter? I see selling in a spectrum. It's not binary. Usually you have 2 types of sellers. One type of seller is a very charismatic seller who's, I'm just going to wing it. And usually those sellers are great. They're intuitive. They're natural born salespeople, but they suck at everything else. They can't do admin. They can't do follow up. They just can't do anything else, and they just can't wrap their head around it. On the other side, you have process-oriented sellers who are so dang process-oriented, they have to follow a dang script. Now, I would say I was closer to being more of a process-oriented seller. I had a little bit more authority rather than charisma. And being in this role recently has actually taught me to be a little bit more balanced, which has been very helpful. Now, when you're purely charismatic and you're watching this, and you may be somebody who's a sales leader who's now charismatic and stuff like that, which is great. But in my experience, and from me hiring, training, ramping sales reps, and I've done it with hundreds, most charismatic salespeople are not very good at everything else because they're not process oriented. Most process oriented people are very good at everything else, but they need to bring that charismatic element to it. So in my definition of selling and where I'm at now and how I'm defining it right now is you want to be somewhere in the middle where you're balanced. So you apply a little bit of charisma, but you're also very process oriented because the process allows you to fit within a confine. It allows you to color within the lines, because without a process, you're winging it way too much, versus with a process, you have a higher likelihood chance of success, and then you implement your charisma within the process, right? So that was very helpful for me. Now, another big thing that I do want to share is that selling is a handful of skills and processes that, when done correctly, is going to lead to you making more money and closing more sales. And this is also another thing for those people that are like, I don't know if I can sell. Yes, you can, because it's a handful of skills and processes. Walking is a handful of skills and processes. Running is too. So is your health. If you know how to track your food and measure your food and work out, you are going to get fit. Right? Same thing with your relationship. Your relationship is a set of skills and processes that you apply. Same thing with your wealth. Same thing with business. It's skills and processes. So if you can do all those things, then you can sell. So why should you listen to me? I've closed close to $40 million in sales. That's both B2C and B2B. And in the last 10 months, I sold close to $2.6 million in revenue, B2B specifically. This was B2B sales consulting and recruitment specifically. Now, who is this for? This is for business owners that want to improve their ability to sell, specifically single founders or founders that have maybe one salesperson and they're trying to help them improve, and this is your first time getting yourself out of sales, or sales leaders who want to help improve their sales team. If you're a sales leader, feel free to send this to your sales reps. Or if you're a career seller and you want to be able to improve and get better. So the first lesson and idea is selling with authority, not just conviction. So what I've come to realize is that most people don't want to think. Human beings are energy conservation machines. We would rather lay on a couch and conserve our energy to run away from a lion, which was back in the OG days when we were in the savannah. Okay. So people don't want to make decisions. They want you to tell them what to do. They need you to think for them. This is irrespective of B2C or B2B. Now, if you have an educated buyer, what does thinking for them actually look like? If you have an educated buyer, their version of thinking is you building the plan together. So it's more of a collaboration where you're collaborating with them. You're still thinking for them. You're giving them options. They're selecting, and then you're going down that route. If it's not an educated buyer, this is usually more of a B2C buyer. You just want to just give them the solutions. Like, this is what you need to do. So you should just shut up and listen to me, because I've seen thousands of your cases. Like if it's weight loss, it's like, Tina, I know you tried a calorie deficit, but you probably didn't do it well. So you should just shut up and listen to me, because we've got 2,000 testimonials, right? Now, the difference between conviction and authority. Conviction is you believing in your product and service, right? Undeniable conviction. Now, I've seen salespeople who are not process oriented, who had no charisma. They had just pure conviction on the product, and they would outsell any salesperson all day long because they just spoke their truth. Now, authority is you addressing things head on and not being afraid to what I call fight the prospect. I have this idea of just volume and violence. Sometimes you just have to be violent, which is just like massive amounts of reps, super directness, just aggressiveness, head down. And like that's sometimes what is required in sales. So you get more, I've realized, especially in B2B, you get more from being direct than beating around the bush. Right? This is telling them no, putting people back in their place sometimes, because like things don't add up. They'll give you numbers and metrics and you're like, it doesn't make sense. So like, where is it missing? Do you just not have the data? And so Charlie Munger always has this very good maxim that I refer back to. It's tell the truth, tell it fully, tell it fast. Like I used to want to accommodate for people's feelings and how they would perceive me. And then as soon as I kind of washed that away and I just started telling people directly, like what you're telling me is very stupid and it's probably not going to work. I used to say this line. It's like, hey, I'll personally pay you not to do that. That's how convicted I was in the things that they were saying, because what they were trying to say is never going to work. I'll give you an example. There was a cybersecurity company out of the UK that came to me. They were like, we want to hire SDRs. And I was like, okay, great. You want to hire SDRs. So I ran them through a sequence, a process to be able to ask them whether they can even handle SDRs. They had no system. They had no processes. They had no list. They couldn't tier the accounts. So I was like, what are you going to do with SDRs? You're going to throw SDRs at a problem where you don't even have a system to put the SDRs into, right? So that's what I mean by being very direct. And so how I like to be direct, I usually just ask for permission, which is, hey, are you open to some feedback? And people will usually say, yes. Oh, I'm totally growth oriented. Yes, love it. Give it to me. Okay, cool. How direct can I be with my feedback? And then I pause. And they usually say, oh, it's not going to hurt my feelings. Then I just rip them to shreds. Now, the way that I do it is that I'll like rip them to shreds and just be like, hey, listen, I'm not here to make you feel bad. I'm just saying this to help you. I want to see you succeed. Let's actually fix this. So what'll happen when you're very strongly convicted and you have a prospect or somebody who's just very stubborn and they're just not willing to listen, they're going to come back to you and they're going to say something like, I don't know if this is going to work for me, right? And clearly the math works. So this is what I mean by authority. Like it's looking at them dumbfounded and being like, what do you mean it's not going to work? Like walk me through why you think this is not going to work for you. Because not only has it worked for thousands of people, but the math that I'm mathing is mathing. So like, why wouldn't it work? So bottom line is that if you have the skills and you have the expertise and you know exactly what you're talking about, don't take people's bullshit, especially the prospects. Like give it to them straight, put them in their place, and they're going to respect you for it. Moving on. The second lesson is the first 60 seconds. So a lot of sales trainers and sales people talk about taking frame. I need to take the frame from you. Getting you into my frame, X, Y, and Z. Personally, I think a lot of that is a load of crap. B2C, yes, because like if you get a talker, good luck. You need to cut those people off and just be like, hey, listen, this is how we're going to run the call. This is what we need to do. But in B2B, like the way you take over the frame is just identifying why is the person there, whether it's inbound or outbound. Even if it's inbound, if the lead is coming in inbound, you want to be able to say, okay, like, hey, why did you book a call? If it's outbound, like you did an outbound message and they're booking a call from the sources outbound, then it's, hey, what was it about the message that resonated with you to want to book a call, a demo with us, right? And so people will like start having conversations. And this is a big thing that we would see in our call reviews, especially when I was in the team trainings. It was like people would start their calls without knowing or realizing what the main concern of the prospect was. Like, why did that person decide to book a call? For example, so the way that I like to do it, I like to build a little bit of rapport. My rapport is super simple. Where are you calling from? Cool. I'm over here. I'm here in Dallas. Where are you located? Awesome. Were you familiar with our company? No. All good. That's fine. Hey, what made you want to reach out? That is my extent of rapport. My extent of rapport is just, I just want to get to the point because people respect that. Right? Now, you have to understand, you may be more of a repair salesperson. I am not. I just like to get to the point because my time is valuable. Remember, I'm a founder who went into sales, right? Not the other way around. And so I treat my time as if I'm a founder. And when I'm usually consulting as if that would be my client, right? Now, in B2B, when you get to the point, people will respect you more. I already talked about that. So stop dilly-dallying. It shows that you respect your time and you come across as an expert. Now, what's going to happen is sometimes you're going to have a prospect who dumps their entire story. The reason they're doing that is they just want to feel understood, which is totally okay. You want to let them be able to do that. Hear them out, acknowledge what they said, and just ask the question again, or just got it. So what you're telling me is that, like, I'll give you an example. When somebody would come in, they would tell me this entire business story. It's like, got it. So the biggest reason you're on this call is because we need to solve consistent lead generation. Is that correct? Yes. I have gotten clear on the problem. Now I can direct my process and have conversation around lead gen and try to figure out what is the problem in lead gen. So then I can then determine if they're a good fit for me to work with, right? So bottom line, get very clear on why the person is on the call with you. And this will help you steer and navigate the conversation. And then it'll allow you to ask discovery questions around that single point to get more clarity. Now, moving on to lesson number 3, the one job of discovery. So I'm going to piggyback off of my last point. Finding the main constraint of why the person is there. This is a hill that I will personally die on, right? Then when it comes to discovery, which in my opinion is one of the most important part of a sales process, discovery is what makes or breaks a sale, right? Everybody knows that. Now, when it comes to discovery, there's no right or wrong like length of discovery. Sometimes I had to spend the entire call going through discovery to figure out like what the actual motive was or where the actual problem was or figuring out an angle. Right? And I've had times where literally I had to do 11 calls with different prospects in the organization. So my prospect was the organization. I had to do 11 calls with different people. And each time a new person would come on, I had to do a discovery on their end to figure out their initiatives, what they were trying to do. And then when I accumulated my pitch, when it was time, I was able to present it to them because I had all these different people to be able to gather all the discovery information from, because I wanted to make sure that my pitch was custom tailored to every single person that the engagement or them purchasing from us as a vendor would be affected, right? Long story short, customized discovery. So going back to the idea of creating systems and processes, because I'm very process oriented. In my last role, I condensed my discovery down to 7 things, right? After the first 2 months, I was just going way too deep. It was taking way too long because not only in 45 minutes, I had to figure out the constraint, I had to build their business, I had to reframe them, I had to price drop, I had to objection overcome and take their money, right? If they were a good fit. Now, what I did was I was like, okay, great. Well, let me just reverse engineer from the outcome that I want. And I just want to ask the questions that I need in order to move the sale forward. And so one of the top closers before he left our team was like the guy, when I reviewed his calls, he would only ask questions that would move the sale forward. That's it. Like he was not asking fluff. Like every single question homeboy asked was, can you buy or not buy? Like that was it. And it was so eye-opening for me because I think with discovery, so many people beat around the bush when it's just ask the clear questions and the prospect respects it. So after the first 2 months of me trying to figure all this out, I literally dropped my discovery down to 7 questions. And the 7 questions are, what is your main constraint? Why are you on this call? I would not move forward until I got a very clear answer of why they were on the call. Right? The second thing is, what is your offer, your price point, your target market? Who's involved in the decision-making process? So, right, to figure out who's going to be the decision maker. What's your current acquisition process? Because we sold lead generation and sales consulting, right? So we sold meta ads. So I wanted to make sure if they were open to doing meta ads. So I would ask, what are you doing currently for acquisition? Get their numbers. Got it. Have you considered meta ads? No. Would you be open to meta ads? If they say no, I'm going to pause right there. I'm going to overcome any limiting beliefs that they have. And if they're not willing to overcome those limiting beliefs, then they're not a good fit because it does not move the sale forward. They're not aligned with what I'm trying to sell them. No amount of convincing is going to help me do that in my pitch if they're not convinced that meta ads is the way to go. Right? So then from there, the next thing I would ask is like current revenue and target revenue, right? This was B2B specific. Have they worked with a company similar to us or talking to anybody else? Why? I want to know, are they price shopping? Are they vendor shopping? So then I want to be able to pull up the vendors' case studies and their reviews to be able to crap on the vendor. If I know the vendor, really sharing with them or making them a special offer to be able to move forward and cancel all the calls with members. Like I've had calls where I knew the person was talking to other people. I put together a really good offer in my pitch. And I said, hey, as an incentive, if you cancel all the calls and move forward with me, I'm willing to do this for you. Right? So again, it gives you a lot of negotiating power. I get a lot of the info that I need to help this person to help close the deal ultimately. And then last but not least, if this is a good fit, how soon are you looking to make a decision? Right? Real direct, because then I can see, okay, is it a timeline thing? What thing is it a logistics thing? Is it gonna be a uncertainty thing? What's gonna get in my way to be able to close, which I'll talk about in the objection overcoming section. So I kept it short and snappy because like my discovery went from being like 25, 30, 35 minutes to being 15 minutes in and out. I just got all the clarity that I needed. I would double click into any of these that I didn't understand or wasn't anything clear, but I just got through it very quickly and aggressively. So ultimately, brevity. What you can say in 10 words, say it in 5. Right? One thing that I also learned inside of discovery is give people a way out. Never make them admit that they're clueless. So if someone would come on, it's like, hey, what's your offer? What's your price? And who's your target market? Oh, I don't know what my offer is. Okay, cool. Is that why you jumped on the call with us today to figure that out? Yes. Great. Awesome. I have some feedback for you. I'll share that with you later. Let's continue moving on. Because we had a section where we did discovery and then we had a pre-pitch. Pre-pitch is where we destroyed them and overcome all their limiting beliefs. So that way the pitch fit around the pre-pitch, which I can get into later. Next thing I'm gonna talk about is buyer type. So that's number 4. You wanna be able to identify the buyer type. What does that mean? You wanna be able to know what type of buyer that you're actually dealing with. And I'm not gonna take credit for this because I learned this from my director, David Dre, who's probably one of the best sales people that I know right now, like on planet Earth. And I know that's a big claim. And he's a really good friend of mine, a close friend of mine, but like he's a G. So what he taught me was there are 4 types of buyers. There's a seasonal buyer who buys every few months. Right? They're just seasonal, and you could probably see that as you're kind of classifying the buyer. And so I usually like to do that when I'm in discovery to figure out what type of buyer there is. The next one is a discount buyer. They want a deal. So I know that I'm going to hike up the price and then say, hey, if you move forward today, here's the incentive. Right? Needs. They need something right now. If that is the case, then it's like, hey, I'm going to use pain to be able to close this person, or impulse. They literally just saw it. They want it. They want to buy. They usually need less information. They usually just need to know that, hey, it's going to work, and they usually buy things, and that's okay, right? So in discovery, like I said, I like to figure out what type of person I'm speaking to, so that way I can identify what incentive I'm going to give them to make a buying decision, right? If they're a seasonal buyer and they buy every few months, well, I'm going to give them an incentive to move forward right now, right? Because they're like, oh, I'm just gathering information for the next time. Well, it's like, hey, here's the pain, here's the problem, here's an incentive, let's move forward. If they're a discount buyer, I know I'm going to hike up the price or make it look like a premium and then drop it down. Let's dive into number 5, how to not pitch like a dumbass. So I used to pitch like a dumbass. And what I used to do is I used to pitch the farm, and people would get overwhelmed and think that I was overselling them. So what I did was I stopped over pitching. I made more sales. And so the lesson here is only pitch what the prospect needs. That's why we do discovery, because you want to figure out what the prospect actually needs. And then in your pitch them what they actually need. That's it. And then the second part, sometimes we call this in a pre-pitch, where you break their limiting beliefs of the prospect and you get them to buy into your thesis. Because in marketing, whenever we design a marketing message, you want the person to believe the top thing, because if they believe this, they're going to believe this. So I'll give you an example in our company. If I can get people to believe that their problem is not lead gen, it's not spending more money on ads, it's working the leads that they currently have. And then that's belief number 1. The second belief is that, and if I can get them to believe that boring sales is the fastest and easiest way for them to be able to work their leads and take their current leads and book them into appointments, all their objections will be overcome and they'll buy. So that's what we call a belief ladder. Right? And so what we want to do is, in a sale, you want to approach it the same way. It's that a pre-pitch breaks the belief ladder, gets them to get bought into the initial thesis, and then your pitch gets them to buy into the product or the solution that you're going to provide to overcome the initial thesis. I hope that makes sense. And I'm happy to dive into that and break that down. And so in the pitch, you sell the solution to the initial thesis, right? So let me give you an example. Right? So if a prospect comes in and they are looking for salespeople, but they don't qualify for salespeople because they don't have enough leads. So in the pre-pitch section, I would reframe their like bad thinking of, hey, like I want to get them to believe that their problem is not a sales rep problem. It's a lead gen problem. And here's why. Because if I give you a salesperson right now and you don't have enough leads, well, you're not going to be successful, because I want to be able to present my solution to the problem. And I'm actually being true. This goes back to when we were talking about authority. Sometimes you just need to tell people how it is. Because if they're delusional, well, you got to let them know that they are delusional, right? So, and a simple framework that I use for pre-pitching or pitching, ultimately, it's here's a mistake that most people make. Here's why it causes certain problems for you. Here's what the cost of that is. So instead, what we do is we do this, which gets you this. What questions do you have on that specifically? See how it's condensed down? I'm not talking for 15 minutes. I'm asking them, I'm telling them. So like, here's an example. Right? The mistake that most people make when they're spending money on ads is they'll just spend more money on ads, and only a fraction of their leads are going to be booked. And so what ends up happening is that the cost to acquire a customer just goes up, because running meta ads is a window. Right? It's a bidding war. And so it's going to get more and more expensive year after year after year. So what we do instead is we want to take the same amount of lead flow and same amount of ad spend and convert more of those leads into bookings. And when you do that, your cost per acquisition goes down. You with the same amount of ad spend, you're able to make 2x, 3x more money, because you're going to be more efficient. So the way that we do that is we install an AI SDR and an SMS system that calls the leads within 30 seconds of them opting in, qualifies them, and books them in for an appointment and makes sure that they show up. Does that make sense? What questions do you have on that specifically? Right? That's how the pitching statement, because I started with, hey, here's your problem. Here's a solution I'm recommending. What questions do you have on that specifically? Right? Now, one thing is sell them what they came in for. Because like the one problem that I used to do a lot of is like, I used to just overload the pitch. So just sell them what they need. Everything else, throw in as a complimentary bonus. So it's like, hey, this is the main problem. We're going to solve this main problem. And on the house complimentary, I'm going to throw in these things that'll support you as well as an additional. Don't even worry about it. Now they're like, oh, dude, I'm just paying to get that problem solved, not for all of this auxiliary stuff, right? Now, here's a bonus real quick that I want to share. Sell with evidence, not trust me, bro. Like the more evidence you can use right now in the sales industry, the buyer's becoming more educated. They can go to ChatGPT or Claude and be able to get more answers, right? We used to get a lot of people that used to just find us from AEO and they would book calls because the AIs would actually recommend our company. And so when you're pitching, like pull up case studies to verify. So if I'm trying to help somebody overcome their limiting beliefs of, like, let's say somebody comes to me and be like, meta ads don't work. It's like, dude, you're an idiot. Of course, meta ads don't work. The reason why it didn't work for you is because you were using an agency out of India, no offense, and they don't understand the US market. That's why it didn't work. They didn't put together an offer for you. Let me show you a case study of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people that we did this with and it actually worked. So why wouldn't it work for you? Does that make sense? How do you feel about that? Does that resonate with you? So what I'm actually doing is when I make a point, I am giving evidence to support that point, so it cements it into the prospect's head that what he's talking about is real. It's not a, hey, trust me, bro, I'm just trying to sell you, right? And even when I was trying to overcome like somebody's beliefs, I would tie it in with customer proof and customer testimonials. And if you don't have customer testimonials, that's okay. You can actually pull up like research studies or things from Reddit. Like I'll pull up random websites of companies that I've studied and just be like, look, this company's doing it this way. It doesn't mean that you've worked with that company, and you can be honest, like, hey, they're not a customer. I'm just using this as an example. But what you're doing is you're making a point and then tying evidence to it to make it a very undeniable point. And if somebody doesn't listen to that, they're just completely fucking stupid. Right? So this way, it's not them taking my word for it. It's me cementing the belief and making sure that it's true with evidence. There are only 4 objections. So before I go into this, I was doing consulting primarily that was focused around marketing and building a lot of outbound motions, right? And so for me, the last time that I sold prior to this role was like 2023. So it had been years and I was very, very, very rusty. And for me, objection overcoming wasn't like, I wasn't really process oriented around objection overcoming. I would say I just pushed a person to buy and it usually worked for me. But the last 10 months, I've gotten really good at overcoming objections because it was something that I had to learn in order to get very good at this role. And the reason for that is because we were in a very competitive market and there was a lot of players that were cheaper. And so we had to learn how to objection overcome to be able to get people across the finish line. Now, I want to give credit where credit is due. This is coming directly from Cole Gordon. So I'm literally just taking everything that I learned from him and being able to kind of share it with you and simplify it the way that I understand it. So there are two main objections that you're usually going to run into. It's going to be uncertainty and logistics. So uncertainty is they don't believe in you. They don't believe in your product. They don't believe in your company, and they don't believe in themselves. It's usually one of those four. Logistics is money, time, or spouse. So the big lesson that I've learned, if you take anything away from this, is you have to address uncertainty first. So what is uncertainty? Like I said, they don't believe in you. They don't believe in the process. They don't believe in the product. They don't believe in the company, or they don't believe in themselves. All good. So we want to handle uncertainty first. Once they believe that it's going to work, everything else is logistics. Okay, so here's the process for objection overcoming. So after the price drop, I would go into what we call a double tie down. And the tie down is, hey, money and everything aside, is there anything else keeping you from being less than 100% certain that this is exactly what you need to do, right? Or this is exactly what you need. It's getting them to admit, no, it's exactly like I'm 100% in, it's money. Most people, you want to listen to the tonality. They're like, yeah, it's like, okay, it doesn't sound like you're 100% in. The second you do another tie-down, got it. So you're 100% in. We just need to figure out money, spouse, timing, whatever. If you don't clearly address the uncertainty and you don't flesh it out, the person's never going to buy. And so this is where you have to listen to tonality. So this is, if they're uncertain, they're going to give you shaky answers, right? Sometimes people will say they're not 100% in. So you have to listen to their tonality. They're not going to tell you they're not 100% in, right? Because human beings are all liars until proven otherwise. So what helped me with objection overcoming was reframing what an objection actually is. And if you think about it, objection is just doing discovery all over again. And so the reframe that I had to do is I used to get pissed off at people, especially when people would get emotional. It's like, dude, it's like, be logical with me and make a decision. But what I had to overcome for me was staying playful and curious and treating it like it's going to be fun. So like I made it a game. And so what's going to happen is, one thing that I also learned is that most prospects will not be able to tell you and articulate their objection. So you have to just give them the objection. So when a prospect logically couldn't tell me that, like why they would felt uncertain, I would just tell them like, hey, is it like, so when a prospect logically could not tell me what they were uncertain about, I would try to interject with a lot of conviction and belief. Hey, like, don't even worry about it. We're going to take care of you. We've got a lot of testimonials. We've got your back through this. Like, let's just make this happen. Now, if they continue giving me the same uncertainty, it's like, hey, usually when people tell me that, it's usually one of two things. One, they don't think this is going to work for them, or usually it's about the money. Which one is it? And then that way I'm giving them options rather than telling them, like, tell me what is actually, or like, what are you uncertain about? Some people are just uncertain, and that's just the reality. And those are the people that need leadership to make a decision, and that's okay. So now when it comes to logistics, especially when it comes to money, you can go into something called open wallet, right? And open wallet is, you want to be able to see, okay, how much cash do they have coming in the next 30 days? How much cash do they have in reserves? And how much credit do they have access to? Now, don't be an idiot and try to do this with extremely large organizations. Usually, if it's a large organization, it's never going to be about money. It's usually always going to be about the decision maker, uncertainty, or getting the champion bought in so they can sell it within the organization. So sometimes you just need to understand that certain situations with larger organizations, it might just be a 50% now, 50% upon delivery, which is very easy to do. Now, when it comes to the spouse objection specifically, if the way that I like to approach it is that, hey, if your spouse and business owner was 100% on board, you'd move forward right now. Is that right? First, you do a tie down. Hey, outside of talking to your spouse, is there anything else keeping you from being less than 100%? No. Got it. So you're 100% in. You just want to talk to your spouse. Yes. Got it. So if your spouse was 100% in and they were on board, we'd be moving forward right now. Like, you'd be whipping out your credit card and you'd be paying right now, right? Yes. Okay. So here, now you have two options. Depending on the person, you can push for the sale if you know that they're very suggestible, or you can get this person 100%, 150% sold. Because if you get them sold, by the time they talk to the person, they're going to get that person sold. And now you've got the sale, and then you've scheduled a follow-up to make sure that you can close the deal. So here's what you can say. Like, listen, if you're 100% in and your partner was on board, you've been moving forward, like, let me get you 150% in so you can go and actually sell them, right? What do you need from me in order to be 150% in? Now, if they're like very suggestible, it's like, listen, I'm not in the business of breaking marriages. How about we do this? You're 100% in. Like, what if they say no? Do you think they're going to say no? No, they're not going to say no. Even if they say no, I'm going to do it anyway. Okay, cool. Well, if you're going to do it anyway, let's just do it right now. And if for whatever reason, you come back to me in 24 hours or in 2 days, and this is like, you're like, hey, I'm going to get a divorce because of this decision to grow my business, like, we'll just refund you. Fair enough? Fair enough. And then you just move forward. So when it comes time to getting that person to be 150%, you want to make them your champion and teach them how to sell the solution. Right? You also want to get the contact information of the other person, right? And then schedule the next meeting. Because then, based on the conversation that you had, you can fill that person in on a recap email or anything like that, and then be able to get them to be bought in, or maybe even get their cell phone number, or just from their email, you can then have an email exchange, call them really quickly before the next call, get them filled in. Because what ends up happening, especially in B2B sales, especially in like B2B enterprise sales, a lot of the work is not happening in the main meetings. It's the stuff in between. It's the texting, the emailing, the 10-minute phone calls here and there, the pulse checks. That's where the sale is actually being made, not on the main calls where everybody's jumping on and just getting an update to figure out what the next steps are. Right? Now, if you remember, there's like a couple different types of buyers. Right? Some people are just looking for a really good deal. So this is a very good bonus thing that I learned. All it requires is just a little bit of negotiation. So what does this mean? The line that I really like to use, especially if I know that this person's going to sign up if there's a really good deal. Number one, I always pitch higher. Like if your product is like 9,000, pitch it for 11,000, because then you could just drop down and renegotiate that $2,000. Right? Super easy to do. And the line that I like to use, and I learned this from David, if there was a good reason for you to move forward today, would you do it? And a lot of people will laugh. They're like, ha, ha, ha. Like, boom, boom, boom. Okay, cool. Like, hey, if I give you a good reason to move forward today, would you cancel the other calls and move forward with me today? Some people are very suggestible. Like, yeah, I totally would. Okay, cool. Great. So what's the reason that you need in order to move forward today? And they'll give you the reason. And you say, great, I can handle this, or I can't handle this, or let me go talk to my director, or let me do X, Y, and Z, and let's just get you moving forward. Right? So what you could do is just a little bit of negotiation to figure out how can you get this deal across the finish line, right? They just give you what you need in order to get them to buy. So just do that if you can. Now, moving on to number 7, keep asking for the close. I remember the reason this came up is because I was doing a call review of mine with my now business partner, and he was in the same team. And I just kept looping with an objection. This guy was super uncertain. I wasn't very good at objection overcoming. This was early in when I started this role. And I would just never ask for the sale. I would have overcome the objection, and then I would just it was just being really weird. I was being really stupid. So my business partner, like during the call, literally Steve was just like, bro, just ask for the fucking sale, right? So I'm going to say that same thing to you. Just ask for the fucking sale. And so the more you ask, the more pressure it builds. It gets the person to either make a decision or just say no. Right? And the pressure is what makes the real objections come out, because people buy because of a problem. So you want to push on the problem and the cost of an action. And don't feel bad for asking the hard questions. Right? Sometimes you can ask the hard questions of when somebody says, hey, like, I don't know, money's really tight. Well, hey, this is the exact reason why we should do this. So this is where a little bit of charisma and playfulness comes in. And that's why I talked to you about it earlier, where you need to have like process oriented, but also charisma. So you have the process to be able to color within the lines, but you have charisma to be able to like get people to move forward. So if somebody gives you an objection, it's like a stupid reason why they're uncertain. It's like, hey man, like that's the exact reason why you should do this. Like we're going to take care of you. Don't even worry about it. You're going to be wildly successful. Let's just do it right now, baby. Right? You're just asking constantly like, no, I don't know if I should wait or stuff. Like, hey, listen, a lot of people think that they're going to wait. This is not going to solve your problem. This is not going to go away. How long have you been trying to figure this out? 6 months. You're going to wait another 6 months to figure this out? Listen, you got the solution. We know we can solve it. We got the testimonials to prove it. So let's move forward, baby. So you just always consistently looping and asking for the sale in different ways, because the more pressure you build, and honestly, if you do it in a very charismatic way, I find the prospect just starts laughing with you. And they're like, this guy's just asking for the sale. They're like, all right, you know what, dude? Let's just do this. Right? So even the persistence some people like and they enjoy, and they're like, hey, like I'm going to get this person a deal because they're actually trying, because most salespeople don't try. So, and always remember this one thing, like, and this is a big thing that's very helpful for me. People need someone or something to believe in until they can believe in themselves. And so for people that are uncertain, sometimes they're just uncertain for no reason. These are the people that are usually sheep. These are the people that can't make decisions. These are the people that take 6 months to figure out what type of business they want to build. They never execute. They never hit first. They talk and hit later. So they need someone or something to believe in until they can believe in themselves. So just take your conviction, take your authority, and pouring into them, and get the transference of conviction is going to help them make that decision. All right, moving on to number 8. This is hitting money and making reoffers and something I call long-term follow-ups. Okay, that's what LTFU is. So everyone knows that the sale is made in the follow-up. Everybody talks about it, blah, blah, blah. Now, there's also another type of follow-up. There's 2 types. So the one is called a reoffer, and one is a long-term follow-up. I'll break this down. So again, shout out to Cole Gordon for instilling this into my sales framework. Right? So first is going to be the reoffer. So what is the reoffer? The reoffer is when somebody is a close lost, or somebody said, hey, they're going to get back to you, they ghosted you, or they need to think about it, and you just couldn't handle the objection. So you hit them with a reoffer. So you wait a couple days, right? Maybe it could be 14 days, it could be 21 days, whatever you prefer. And this is like, it's not really a special offer. It's just an offer to get them back on the phone. We call it a reoffer. It's just like if I pitched a 2-pay I'm just going to say, hey, like I'll give you an example. Hey, my director reviewed your call and there's something new that we're testing and with 5 people to allow them to come in for a lesser amount and help you get results. Is that something you'd be open to? I used to do this with my gyms when I had my gyms. Every 12 weeks, we used to do a $21 for 21 days or a $7 for 7 days or $14 for 14 days. It would get people re-engaged, all of our old leads, because we wanted to make sure that we can turn more of those leads into customers. That was the main focus with the same amount of ad spend, which is shameless plug, what we do with boring sales now. So with the re-offer, we'd get people back in, and then my salespeople would upsell them into annual memberships or long-term programs, right? So the goal was to get people in, or they would just do the $21 for 21 days, and then within 2 weeks, we would upsell them anyway. Okay? So the goal is to get the person re-engaged to want to respond. And once that person responds, there's no special offer. You're just trying to get them a better payment plan or help them with terms or get them back over the phone, handle their objections again, and get them to buy, right? So that's one thing that you could do within that 14 to 21 day window to make more use of the leads that you have. And like, I used to close 5 or 6 deals just from re-offers because the person would leave. They need to think about it. They would ghost me. I would hit them up within 14 to 21 days. I had AI kind of just set all of this up in reminders for me and stuff like that. I would copy and paste the message because I had the template here. Literally, this was my message that I would send. And people would hit me back up. I'd call them up real quick and I'd renegotiate and close the deal, right? So there's no special offer. It's just getting them back on the phone and renegotiating. Now, when it comes to doing follow-ups, the one thing that I don't like to do is just send like, hey, just following up, just was thinking about you, dropping a line. I think it's like the dumbest thing ever. So what I like to do is I like to lead in with value, because when you lead in value, it's all about association. Right now we're developing our software. And so I'm designing the UI and the UX of the software where it's association. So people associate positivity with our product. And so they like, we have a hero page where it has a quote every single day around sales and around business, because business is freaking hard. And it says, let's win the day. And that was very specific on why we designed it, because every single time you log in, you hit let's win the day. It creates that association with positivity in the product, and people are going to continue using it. So what you want to do is you want to be able to create association of value between you and the prospect. So even though they don't buy right now, they're going to buy in 6 months because you're the salesperson that is sharing the most amount of value with them. Now, usually I used to share a lot of trainings that the founders would make, or internal trainings or things of that sort that would be very useful. So having content, like I said, is very useful for this, especially when you're in B2B. So reports, news, articles, stuff like that. Like I said, this could be YouTube videos or anything that you find. And the way that I do this is like, hey, it says name, hey Bill, saw this recently and it made me think of you. This goes deeper into the problem that you were running into. Want me to send it over? I never send it over. I say, want me to send it over, because what I'm trying to do, the goal is to get a reply, right? When I get a reply, they're going to say, yes, totally. And then I usually respond and say, hey, let me dig that up for you. By the way, based on our conversation, how are you doing? So now it's not because earlier I would have said, hey, based on our conversation, how you doing? No, first it's let me engage with value, get you to respond, and then ask the question that I need to. It's a little bit of a 2-step, but the association that you have is with value. And dude, I followed up with people for 8 months, just doing this every 21 days, sharing value until that person comes back. It's like, dude, you share the most value with me. I'm ready to buy. Right. And so that's where the long-term follow-up of you being just consistent, just playing the long game, playing the games like the infinite game, to be able to get the outcomes that you're looking for. So once you re-engage them, you can put them back into your pipeline and then try to close the deal. So moving on to lesson number 9. And this was a big one for me. Don't sell everyone. And this one's really simple. Don't sell anyone who is not going to be a good customer. If they're pissy, if they're annoying, and they're not going to be very good, trust me, your customer success team and your account management team are going to hate you. And so sometimes I think what ends up happening is salespeople don't really care. And they're like, dude, I'm just going to sell the person and my back-end team will actually take care of this. But dude, in the long run, that person's going to refund. They're not going to want to stay. They're going to have bad expectations. The company loses reputation. You lose your commission. It's just a crapshoot. So if you feel, and this is a lot of it is like gut instinct, if you feel like this person is not going to be a good customer and they're not going to be a reframe, like if this person is going to be a headache on the front end, imagine what they're going to be in the back end. And it's going to bite you in the butt. So if somebody isn't bought into the process, I'd rather just be like, hey, you're not a good fit. If you're not bought into the process, I'm not going to try to sell you something that you're not bought in. Like, I'm not going to sell you something that you don't believe in, right? It's like trying to sell somebody a toothbrush and they don't believe in brushing their teeth. It's going to be a very hard sale. It's going to be very hard for them to brush their teeth, right? Until they believe that brushing their teeth is the right thing that they need to do. This is a very simplified example. But if they believe that brushing their teeth is what they need to do, and then you sell them a toothbrush, it's much easier sale. That's why the belief ladder is very important, because you need to get the person to believe the top level belief, and then they can believe the second belief, which is your product and your sales. So marketing, VSLs, pre-call homework videos, YouTube videos, all need to sell that top belief. So that way you can sell people into the second belief, right? And what I've learned is, and a big part of like don't selling everybody is telling people to go away, but it's also like pulling the sale away. Like right before I used to go into the price drop, I used to just be like, hey, real quick, I want to do a temp check. Money and questions aside, like, how do you feel about the process? Like, do you feel confident that this is going to work for you? And if they didn't give me a surety answer, I would just say, hey, listen, I just don't feel like we're aligned. And I don't want you to come in as a customer if you're not aligned with our process. And so what this does, it takes you and detaches you from the outcome, and it focuses on whether we can help this person or not. Because at the end of the day, your role as a salesperson is to identify, can we help this person? Is this person going to be a good fit? Because if you're just bringing people on and they're refunding and they're not getting results and you're ruining the reputation of the company, well, eventually what's going to happen is they're going to let you go, right? No matter how good you are at sales. And if they're not, well, you got to question the ethics of the company. That's a completely separate story for a whole different video. So the entire focus is just ensuring that we can deliver and solve on the problem. And if you can, and the person's bought in, sell them. And if they're not, don't sell them.